Welcome back to Selena's table and our little Aussie homestead. Today I'm going to make something for my freezer, but I need to get some veggies out. So today we're going to make Asian style dumplings, also known as gyoza. You can buy wrappers from the shop and you can make the filling yourself, and you can make these that way. Or today what I'm going to do is show you how to make the wrappers as well as the filling. When I make these, the possibilities are endless when it comes to what we put in them. And the flavour that I'm going to make today is a beef and vegetable. When I make these, you can use chicken, you can use pork, you can use beef, you can use lamb. You can also just use vegetable. And I've done all of them before. Today I'm just going to do the beef. Everything is the same regardless of what protein you choose to use, or if you're not going to use any meat and you want to keep these maybe more budget friendly, or you just want to get some hidden veg into your family, then the veggie one is also delicious. The only thing that I absolutely always have to have in it is mushroom and is cabbage as far as my vegetables go. Making these dumplings is a two-part process. You need to do your wrappers and you also need to make your filling. Now I make my filling first because I'm cooking my filling, and then I need it to cool down before I put it in the wrappers. You can do this with raw filling. I don't use raw filling. I always cook my filling, and that is because when I buy mince or ground beef, as it's known in some places, I usually just freeze it all up individually straight away. I usually have a little zip bag and I flatten it out and I'll freeze it that way. I've already used half of this one, so I'm just using a half, about 200-250 grams of ground beef for my recipe today. So because, going back to why I don't use it raw, because I buy my mince without preservatives, it doesn't last very long in my fridge. I need to either use it that day or put it in the freezer for a day when I'm going to use it. So therefore, it's already been frozen. I don't want to then thaw out mince, reuse it, and then freeze it again raw. So I always cook my meat, and that way I'm only freezing it raw once and then freezing it cooked once. So what I've got going into my filling today, we've got about 250 grams of ground beef. I have 2 mushrooms. I've one of my giant onions out of the garden. A little bit of ginger. We'll only need about an inch of ginger that we also grew. And then I've just got sort of some miscellaneous veggies. This is where you add the other bits and pieces that you want. I've got some carrots here. I've got one little zucchini. I'm not sure if it's any good. We'll have a look. I've got some beans, and I need to just grab a couple of garlic cloves. I'll be using my food processor today. This recipe is so simple if you have some equipment like a food processor. If you don't avoid making it though. You can grate all your vegetables, or you can chop them really small. So in my food processor, blender, thermomixed thing that I have here, I've just got my blade attachment in there. You don't need one of these machines. This is what I have. I actually burnt out the motor in my old food processor, so this is what I currently have. You can use like a blender if you've got one, although a food processor would be better for doing this. The smaller you get your vegetables, the more hidden they'll be from anyone that is maybe not wanting to eat vegetables. And it really couldn't be simpler. We are going to put all of our ingredients, except our meat, into our food processor. Okay, and then we are just going to blitz it up. If you're grating this, then just grate it all into a bowl and that can all be mixed together, no problem. I'm only cutting these vegetables just to make my processing time a little bit quicker. I need, not that, yeah, that bit. And when I was processing ginger a few months ago, one of you had a fantastic tip, and that was to scrape my ginger with a spoon to get the peels off. And I did try it and it works fantastically. So if you have fresh ginger and you want to get the peels off and you don't want to lose too much, try scraping it with a spoon. This is getting a little old, so I'm just going to use it with the grater. Then here I have 4 garlic cloves. So I have 4 garlic cloves, they're just small cloves. Oops, straight in. We want some carrots. I have a couple of wonky carrots that we grew. This one's a red one. And you don't have to use tiny carrots like I am using. You can use full-size carrots. You probably want to use 1.5 to 2 carrots for the amount of filling I'm making today. If you want to make just vegetable dumplings, feel free to double my vegetable components. And 1 large onion. I have a handful here of mixed beans, and I got a question the other day. I had a question on my, I think the video recently where I picked some of these beans, probably not these particular ones, it was a couple of weeks ago now, and I was asked, do I cook my purple beans in the same way as I cook my green beans? And my answer is yes. So with my purple beans, this particular variety, I think is a king purple bean, and you can see it's green on the inside, purple on the outside. So they cook up green. When we cook them, if we were to steam them, they come out green once they are cooked. They're only purple while they are raw. So here I have yellow beans, some of them are finally ready to be picked, green beans and purple beans. Because that's what we're growing, there's the 3 different colours. You do not need to use multiple different coloured beans. This is just, as you know, what we're growing here. So they are going in, and I've probably got 1/2 cup to 1 cup of beans. We also want to add some cabbage to this, and this is the last of my little baby cabbages that I have picked. I do have a few still out in the garden, but they are a little sad looking. I don't know if we're going to be able to use them or not. Cabbages just were not successful for me this year, but that's okay. I always like to try, and I'm thinking I'm going to have to tear most of that garden out soon anyway, because it's just so hot. So you want about 1 cup of cabbage, and it can also be white cabbage, it can be Asian wombok cabbage, it does not have to be purple cabbage. Mine is purple because that's what we grew. So I'm going to give this a wash and just chop it up because it's all getting thrown through the food processor. So we are washed, very small. You want about a cup of cabbage. So I'm just going to turn this on, get it chopped nice and fine. I like this to be as fine as my ground beef is, so that when I'm actually filling my little dumplings, you know, what it is sort of anyone's guess, and that's what we want it to look like for texture in our family. Yeah, so we're going to whiz this up. Just like that, super fine. All right, now that's ready to be cooked with our meat and our seasoning. And the only other seasoning I use besides salt and pepper when I make these dumplings, regardless of what meat or no meat that I choose to use, is sweet soy sauce, also called ketchup mayonnaise. Okay, that's the only seasoning I use with these dumplings. I put a little bit in my filling, and I also use it as the dipping sauce. So there's really little, you know, effort has to go into when you go to actually eat the dumplings. So over at my stove, I have my large cast iron skillet. You can do this in just a saucepan as well. It doesn't have to be one of these. That's just a little bit of tallow in there from our tallow that we made together. Okay, so I'm just going to melt that down. Once that's melted, we can start cooking. When it comes to making your own dumpling wrappers, you have a couple of options in that you could have made those first and then moved on to making the filling, because they will need to rest for a few moments. Or you can do it this way, where you make the filling and let it cool, or while it's cooling, you move on to making your dumpling wrappers. I do it both ways, and sometimes I buy them. I just found that making them is super simple, really cheap, and it's a little time consuming, but if you have time on your hand, or you want something to do as a family, kids love doing this, making the wrappers is fun too. Our tallow is sizzling away there. So we are going to add our veggies. I'm going to give this a quick wash because we're going to need this again for making our dumpling wrappers. So I've just given these a good rinse, give them a dry, and get that ready, set aside to make my wrappers. I will actually make them today while this meat is cooking, or the filling, I should say, is cooking. But if you want to do one thing at a time, that's also, it's a bit easier to follow along. So we are just sauteing these veggies, trying to get the raw onion, the raw garlic and the raw ginger flavour out, and have that real beautiful cooked flavour. And you will see there's a lot more vegetables than there is meat. The vegetables do cook down a bit though. And every time I make this, it's not measured, nothing's measured, it's just a rough estimate. I use up what I have on hand. It's a great way to use up veggies that are maybe no longer suitable to use in other ways. One of those, dishes that you can use up old fridge veg with. Just Gonna let that cook down a bit before we add our mince. So while that's cooking down, I am going to move on to making the wonton or jiaoji wrappers or dumpling wrappers, whatever you want to call them. This particular machine that I use, it has built-in scales. But if you don't have built-in scales, you're going to want to use your digital scales for this next step. And I will make sure there's a converter in my description box for anyone who needs to convert my metric measurements into cups. That is just something I looked up on Google. So if I've got other recipes on YouTube that you want to follow along with, but you can't because I've used metric measurements like grams, feel free to use Google a metric to cup converter, and that'll give you your cups. So don't feel held back if I've gone and done something in metric measurements and you're a cups person, okay? But I will make sure I link one below for all of you who need to use cups. So I'm going to put my scales on this. We are going to need 285 grams of plain flour and boiling water. That's all these wrappers are. So when you think about how much they cost from the shop, they're pretty expensive for what they are. And at a time for our family when we are trying to save as much as we can on our groceries, they are just exploding in price. So more and more things will be made at home. And this is one of those things that my family love to have as a convenience food. We eat them on top of like 2-minute ramen noodle things. We have them with fried rice. Sometimes we just have them as they are with some dipping soy sauce, and that is lunch. So get yourself either your converter or your scales, 285 grams of plain flour straight into your food processor. Yes, you can hear my kettle boiling. That's because my water is in the kettle boiling now. $285 grams of plain flour, and then you want to add 3/4 cup of boiling water. So this has just boiled, and as soon as you add your hot water, you do want to get your machine running. So that's only half full. That's 3/4 cup. Get that moving. It does only take about 15 to 20 seconds when you're using a food processor to do that step. So don't walk away, stay with it, and it's going to ball up like so. You can see there's still steam. I don't know if you can see it, but there is steam coming out of there. This is hot. We now need to get this bundled together and wrapped up in plastic wrap to let it rest for 15 minutes. If you're making this along with me, don't forget about your vegetables over here. We are ready now to add our mince. I'm going to let that continue to cook while I wrap up my wrappers. Well, not my wrappers, my wrapper dough, I should say. Okay. It's hot and it's sticky, but it holds together. It's kind of like Play-Doh, I guess. It's a little bit different a consistency to pasta. Just making sure I've got all the flour. Okay. So just like this, while it's nice and warm, wrap it up and set that aside. Doesn't need to go in the fridge, just needs to go to the side. Our dough is behind me resting. And I'm just wanting to get this meat browned off and mixed well into my vegetables. so that every piece of dumpling, every individual dumpling, has meat and veggies in it. It smells delicious. It's got a lovely caramelized Asian food smell with the ginger and the garlic in there. And of course, if you like things even stronger, you could add more ginger. I'd probably, for the amount I'm making here today, I would probably only add what I added plus maybe half that sort of amount more. And with garlic, you could probably add 6 cloves if you were really wanting strong garlic and ginger flavors. I'm not adding anything like garlic powder or onion powder to this. It doesn't need it. We have the fresh veggies in there. If, however, you don't have fresh garlic and ginger, you can substitute by adding some garlic powder and some ginger powder. And onion powder too, I guess, if you want. But onions form a nice part of the dish, so you do want to make sure you've got onion in there. And that is coming together well. So I'm ready to go in with some sweet soy, and we're looking at about 2 tablespoons there. Okay, hit that with a little bit of salt and pepper. Not too much salt because the sweet soy is salt. And that's done. We can turn that off. And we want this filling to cool down before we can start rolling out our wrapper. So the cast iron is going to hold on to heat for quite a while, so I'm just going to put my filling into a bowl just to speed up the cooling process because the bowl is not hot. And I also wanted to say, if you don't have sweet soy, if you can't get your hands on sweet soy sauce, but you can get your hands on just regular soy sauce, you can add the same amount of soy sauce that I did and about a tablespoon of brown sugar. That will help sort of mimic the flavour that we get out of this one. So now that my mixture is in here, I'm going to set it aside and let it cool down. So our mixture is warm but not hot, so I've just popped it in the fridge while we do this next step. The dough is warm to the touch, but it's not hot at all. It has been 15 minutes, so this is ready to use. We won't be using plain flour when we roll out our dough. We will actually be using corn flour, also known as cornstarch. If you are buying your wrappers, you will also need the cornstarch, just in case things are wanting to stick together. So this is your product if you're wanting to keep things from sticking, like putting them on the bench and things like that. You will also need a little bit of water. When I've made dumplings forever and ever and ever, and I used to roll them out with a rolling pin and it was perfectly fine. However, since having a pasta maker, it's made the job so much quicker and so much simpler. And then I came across this thing at, I think it was even Kmart or something, not that long ago, maybe a year ago, and it has made the shaping of my dumplings even quicker. So I feel like these were good investments. I mean, I use my pasta machine all the time, as you would know, for the homemade pasta. So if you are intimidated by the process of making your dumpling look correct, get yourself one of these. It couldn't be simpler. However, in saying that, you also don't need one. You can roll these and turn them into little like money bag style. You can just roll them as a spring roll style as well. So it's up to you the shape that your end dumpling looks like as well. Today I will be using my KitchenAid. So I've got a electric pasta roller here. You can use your manual pasta roller, like a pasta machine. You could also just use a rolling pin and a cutter. And for years, that's what I did use. So do not be intimidated if you don't have like a KitchenAid or a pasta maker. What I've got here is the KitchenAid is set up with just the rolling attachment. That's just some corn flour, and that's just water with a pastry brush. I have my dumpling maker. I have something to cut my circle with, and I have got a plate here to put my finished product on. So what I'm going to do first is just put a little bit of corn flour down on my plate and set that to the side. You will get a little bit messy making these. So I keep the plastic because I'm only going to be working in batches. And I'll probably just cut this into 4 long ways. All right, I'm going to take one at a time. So I'll rewrap that. We don't want things drying out. And I'm just going to press with corn flour because I do not want to clog this up. And you can even grab your rolling pin. To make that a little bit easier on the machine. Alright, so that's about 2 mil thick at the moment. We're going to run this through to about number 2. So it's going to go through the numbers, that's starting at number 7, right down to number 2. There's no folding, there's no kneading or anything like that. It's not pasta. You can see the corn flour flaking off, that's fine as well. Corn flour is only there so that it doesn't become sticky in the machine. And I'm just going down a size with each roll. So there we have one sheet. So we have our one sheet. I'm giving it a very light sprinkle of corn flour on both sides. And then you want to cut out circles. The size will be appropriate for your pasta maker, okay, your dumpling form. Right, this bottom of a tin is the size I'm looking for. So you go along and cut them out, and as long as you've put some corn flour, we can actually lay them on top of each other, no problem. And they shouldn't stick. Okay, then what you've got left, we can rebundle up like that and that can go back through the pasta machine. So if you want to roll out all of your sheets of dough and cut them all at once, that's a really efficient way to do this. If you want to just sort of make as you go, you can also do it that way. These little dough pieces can be kept in a Ziploc bag in the fridge for about 3 days if you're wanting to not make a whole batch at once. So just keep that in mind. Just make sure they've got plenty of corn flour between them, because as they sit in the fridge they will soften a little bit more and then they could stick together. So I'm going to show you how I make the dumpling then using this press. So I get a bit more corn flour and I'm really careful to get it really in the ridges of the crimp. Okay, put my piece of dough down and just press a little bit into the divot where the food, the filling will go. And it's about a teaspoon for my particular one. Then just with a pastry brush and some water, just a little bit around the edge. Now I only put the water on one side, because then what I do is I'll lift this and hold it there like that before pressing. That then ensures that I don't have any filling coming out the edges, and it's a nice clean dumpling. This then just gets set aside while I make the rest. And I'll get about 2 dumplings before I have to re-flour my press. This is why you want your mixture to not be hot, because if this mixture was hot while I was trying to fill, it would sort of start cooking the dough a little bit and it would end up just being a lot harder to work with. Now that one's fallen in a little, so I just bring it back up. I have tried doing this where I fill it and use the machine to press it, and it just seems to make a mess. So that's why I hand move the other side of the dough, if that makes sense. So yeah, if I do it just like that, I seem to lose part of my dumpling. It seems to be easier just to manually bring it over, hold it there and press. And just like that, we have 4 ready. And just like that, we are done with that one piece. Normally I would probably roll all of my dough out and then move on to filling rather than doing it little bit by little bit, but I wanted to show you how easy it is. And you know, if you're only wanting a small batch, you can do just a small batch at once. Our wrappers are done, including the scrap pieces. We are ready. Oh, I didn't need to put that there, I need to put it here. Ready to just continue filling all of our dumplings. Now I will fill all of these dumplings, even though we won't eat these right now. They just go in the freezer, and it is so handy having these things available when you want to have a little something yummy that you know what's in it, and it's really, really easy to cook. Another way to fill these, if you don't have one of those, is just a little bit of water around your edge, a little scoop of filling, and then you just bring up, I might have too much filling, and you pinch at the top, and then give that a good pinch there. You've got a little money bag. Okay, so that's the other option. If you don't have one of the little dumpling presses, you can do that. Anyone can do that. Kids can do that. They love it. And once your platter looks like that, you can pop that straight in the freezer if you're wanting to freeze them. You do want to freeze them apart from each other, so not touching, otherwise they will break when you go to take them off this plate and pop them in a bag. So just like that to go in the freezer. We got some trays filled. Let me show you how easy these are to cook. So what I've got behind me is a pot of water that I've brought up to the boil. It's boiling now, so I need to get a move on. This is just a steamer basket. You can use a metal steamer basket if you don't have a bamboo one. You just need something that you can steam in, so it needs to have some kind of holes in the bottom. What I like to do is line it with a piece of baking paper, and I just put some slits like that, okay? And I just place that in my steamer basket. Those slits are going to allow the heat and the steam to come through, but they're going to prevent my dumplings from sticking. You don't want your dumplings to stick, so I'll cook my little money bag. And cooking is exactly the same as if they are frozen. Just put your frozen dumplings in here, give them a little bit of space, and pop the lid on. You can see what color they are there. I'll show you when they're cooked, but we just put that straight on our boiling water. So over here, steamer basket, lid on, straight on our boiling water. They don't take very long, maybe 5 minutes, and you'll know when they're cooked because all we're actually cooking is the dough because we pre-cooked our filling. If you wanted to make these and you're going to use raw filling, it will be slightly different. They will take a little bit longer and you might just need to test 1 or 2, but they won't be significantly longer. It's more that the flavor profile will be slightly different as well because we are going to cook the onions and the garlic and things like that and the ginger via steaming rather than the sauteing that we did. So to show you when these are ready, this is what they started off looking like, just for reference. And now, do you see how they're far more translucent? See the color change? These are almost got a clearness to them and they're shiny. They are done. That one is not done. So now that they're ready, they can be removed from the steam and enjoyed. They are best eaten while still warm. I wouldn't serve these like in half an hour's time. And you can serve them straight out of your bamboo basket if you like. Or just pop them on a plate with some more of that sweet soy. And enjoy. So there you go, ready to be enjoyed. So there you go, super easy, simple, a little time consuming, but delicious Asian style dumplings. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'm going to continue working on making some more of these because I still have some filling left. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give this one a try and have a fantastic week. I'll catch you next time. Bye. These taste incredible. I ate the money bag already. So good. It doesn't even need anything else. I mean, this could be an appetizer, but to me, they're just so good, they might as well be the main.